We are on the doorstep of a new year, but we've got just a few more movies to talk about before it's all said and done. We're going to talk about three big movies. Well, one huge movie. All tonight on Real to Real Talk. Welcome, everybody, to this episode of Real to Real Talk. I am Sergio Barrera, and it is time once again to talk all things movies. Joining me is the other Real to Real Talker, Paul Britton. Paul, it's almost time to say Happy New Year.
I know, and that means we're getting into the swing of like movies being released just for Oscar purposes and stuff.
Right.
Those things that all of the hoity-toity people have already seen, but us plebeians have not been given access to yet. And I'm really enjoying it so far. So
we are a plebs, you're saying.
Yeah.
So
Big
yeah,
time.
absolutely. We're right on the doorstep of a new year, and in the midst of movies being released, like you said, for award season. Last year was quite strange as to how it all went out, and I think it's going to be pretty much a lot of the same this time around. But the bottom line is that we are here to talk about several movies tonight that have released in just the last few days. Of course, everyone is wondering our thoughts on The Matrix Resurrections, but we'll also be talking about Don't Look Up on Netflix and also The Kingsman out in theaters. So it's just one of those things where I say we just get right down to it.
Yeah, let's just dive right in,
Yeah, absolutely. We should. Because and I'm just going to jump right in, as we said before we decided to, or before we started, that let's just get right to the one that I think people want us to talk about, and that is The Matrix, the latest installment, The Matrix Resurrections, which was released on the 22nd. So it's been almost a week, or has it been?
Yeah.
Today's a week. No,
it's been
tomorrow's a week.
This is day 7.
So many have seen it, we hope, because we're going to talk spoilers.
Definitely.
We don't often do this, but it has been a week. Plus, it's also on HBO Max, and so we hope that means folks have seen it. If you have not seen it, this is your warning. We're going to talk spoilers. Not that there's. See, here's the thing, Paul. I don't know that there's a lot to ruin. So, I went into this film. You and I both are big fans of this franchise.
Yes.
And I know that for myself, when I heard there was going to be a 4th installment, I was excited because I was like, okay, I mean, how is it going to go this many years later? What is the storyline going to be, especially because of how it was left? And I was ready for this thing. And when I sat down to watch it, it was on, man. I was like, okay, hit me. It was one of those moments where I was just like, I know I have to watch this through the lens of someone who's going to critique it, but I just was there for pure enjoyment as well, just to see what happened. What was your sort of emotion as you sat down to take it in?
Yeah, I was 100% in. I was just, I wasn't listening to any of the negative talk. I was just like, look, I understand my relationship with this trilogy. For full podcast on that, look back about, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. No, was it 2? Hey, look back a while ago. It was 2 years ago, wasn't it?
Very early on. Yeah.
Yeah. Look back 2 years ago. It was 2 years ago. Look back 2 years ago. Find us. We did a big thing. Bottom line is, you and I both have problems with number 2 and number 3. Less so number 3 than number 2. I was ready to like a Matrix movie again. I was ready to have a new movie come out that was a Matrix movie and just be like, yay, this was great. And so I was in. I was just ready, and
Yeah. No, and it's funny because I saw a spike in the number of watchers, and it suddenly went down. So I think a few people were like, wait, I haven't seen it. So
yeah.
But no, it's one of those things where I tried to go in not expecting anything. I have often wondered, in the years since the finale of the first trilogy, what would you do if you were to revisit this franchise? What would the story need to be? And I have to say, I was pleasantly surprised by the direction that it went. And when I know and think about what I've read, Klaus is here, in terms of what people have to say about this movie, I think some are missing the point.
Mhm.
because one of the largest critiques I've seen about this film is it reaches back too far and too many times to the previous films, and I don't think so. I think the choices that were made to tell this story were good. I liked the callbacks because I felt they did a lot to service the story, and given the direction that they decided to go with the story,
Mhm.
I'm happy with how it all turned out. So
I
I'm
love
curious
the
to know.
first 30. I love the first like 30 to 45 minutes. I genuinely loved it. The movie starts with just this meta contextual presentation
Yeah,
of, you know, this is what it's like to live in the Matrix
in the
all
Matrix,
over
yeah,
again, and also to know that the Matrix exists. It's really tongue in cheek, self-referential.
sure,
Um and I love that aspect of it. That was I had the most fun during Act 1. Like
yeah,
it was just a lot of fun.
I agree.
Um and honestly, I would have liked more of that. Like
Yeah.
that's the so okay, we're going to go ahead and flash it. I just created a new thing. Spoiler alert,
Oh no,
Yeah.
keep that one up for a bit.
Um early on in the movie, Neo is pulled out of the Matrix all over again,
Right.
and that's when, for me, it was kind of that I understand the criticism of it being a retread. Like that's when it's like, okay, well, we've done this, and he goes and sees the
Sure.
the human settlement, and it's like, okay, well, we've seen the human. Like, okay, it's different,
Yeah.
okay. So like what, it wasn't different enough. Like the self-referential meta contextual, uh, you know, opening,
Yeah.
and having, Neo kind of subconsciously trying to resist, and that was great. And I think that's your movie. Like if we're cutting down to it right off the bat, like I that was really new and interesting and different and enjoyable for
Sure.
me.
Sure. I get what you're saying, and I think there was a point for myself where that I could have stood probably another, because I love the first act as well. I love the way in which the sort of character study of Neo Thomas Anderson, right?
Right.
More so,
Right.
and his struggle, the way the machines had, hey, no, you just made a video game. Like I loved all those little conceptual moments of like explaining to us why we can still revisit Neo in this movie, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they did a great job of explaining, and maybe it was quick, but why both of these individuals, right, Neo and Trinity,
Right.
are still with us. That's what I was looking for. This movie needed to give me a strong foundation for me to feel like, okay, I understand why these characters are returning.
Yeah.
It wasn't this sort of like, I don't even know how to describe it, but we have had movies that sort of cheapen this kind of thing. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that there was some good storytelling here that drew me in. Um, I don't know where else you go in terms of what some people will feel like a retread. I felt like, okay, well, we go back to the human, areas. We, visit a very different settlement. Io is totally different from Zion in terms of their
Mm-hmm.
approach. Some good exposition there, in regards to that. Um, I even liked. I think what I struggled with sort of over the last two acts was there was just these quick moments of like, oh yeah, that's why this is happening. Oh, and by the way, yeah, they're helping us now, and not enough of the dialogue bits. I wanted more Neil Patrick Harris,
Yeah. No, I
um,
agree.
and it almost tried to get too fast into the, okay, we need more action,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that's where this movie starts to lose points with me, because it's like, okay, we've seen this, and by the time we get to the third act, I will say that there was this point where I was like, oh dang, could it have been more? Because I wasn't feeling like this exhilarated sort of feeling of like, yeah, kind of like the way you did at the end of the first film,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so it
Right.
it tapered off in a way that was like, okay, well, okay, the story was told. I do want to ask you a question about where this leaves us before we're done, but I don't want to skip anything you have to say about that second and third act, which I enjoyed, but I can see where some people were like, we just redid some stuff here.
Yeah, and here's the interesting thing about the second and third act: it turns into a heist movie, which.
Sure.
Not to be redundant, you and I love heist movies,
Absolutely.
but honestly, you could still make the heist movie and have Neo plugged in. Like
Okay.
I just feel like the unplugging of Neo, of Mr. Anderson / Neo, I felt like that was just why it felt rushed. It
Okay.
was unnecessary. You could have done all you could have done all the explanation of how he's still plugged in and everything within the context of Neo still being plugged in and trying to unplug him.
Yeah.
Everything that happens could have still happened
Okay.
with Neo plugged in still. And the universe of Neo being still plugged in was vastly more interesting.
Yeah.
Vastly more interesting
Sure.
than the real world. Like it just was. And
Yeah.
I don't think that I don't think that's like a hot take or anything either. Like I just feel like anybody who's liked the movie I've seen has said, "Oh, I love the first act."
Sure.
And I think that's just generally like the reaction, and I don't and when it was over, I wasn't like, "Oh, well, okay, I'm glad that's over and now we're back into, Neo visiting Zion, but
Right.
it's called Io now." It's just like I didn't need that. Like it's just it I was perfectly happy with a movie of with a heist film,
Right.
and they're trying to get Neo out, and then they realize at some point that the secret isn't Neo, the secret is Trinity,
Right.
and the secret isn't we need to get Neo out. The secret is we need to get Trinity to get Neo out. Like if
Right.
without Trinity, Neo is nothing, and so if we focus just on Neo, it's not going to work. It's a so the heist goes from we just need the one thing in the museum to oh shit we can't just have the one thing, we need both things in the museum. And that's interesting. Like there's so much interesting plot exposition that can be explored with Neo still plugged in, and with the movie being a heist film, the movie being all right, Neo has let us know that he's still plugged in. There's enough there's enough to hint that he's still in there. There's enough people alive in Io, and if you really want to show Io, you can. They can be planning the heist from Io. It's fine. There's people in there's people in the real world that believe that Neo's still alive and are picking up on the clues that he's laying, and then there are people that don't believe. All of this conflict you can still have without Neo. It just his presence was superfluous, and I think it detracted from the movie, honestly. Like, and I went from loving the first act to liking the movie. Is really what it ended up for me.
Yeah, and again, I mean, I 100% understand what you're saying. I think that it's like anything else. When if you're someone who's going to go with how the story is written and look at it from that perspective only and say, okay, did I enjoy what they did? I'm not like you in the sense that I'm not going to sort of rewrite what it should have been,
right?
But I will say that it was far more interesting than the first act.
All right, I'm going to flash what Nick says here is
okay.
that if he had never been unplugged, he would have never realized that he had been gaslit by the machines using the real memories from the original trilogy to believe his current life was a lie. Except that if you bring back him, you bring back his memories, and so the movie is him chipping away from his memories. So like you don't have to unplug him for that realization to come to him, and it can be through through slow process, and like I think there's a movie there of just Neo coming to the realization, and
I mean, again, if we go with what was in front of us,
right,
we can write and rewrite all day long,
but I'm just all I'm saying is like I
it changed your feeling about the movie.
I do frequently say that I don't, the people present the movie and I take that at face value. And
Mhm.
I'm just saying, I didn't,
Sure.
as presented, I really didn't care for anything not anything, but I didn't care for Neo being unplugged.
Gotcha.
It just, it made everything that happened after it. That's when it became derivative for me. And
Okay. That makes
I'm
sense.
not going to go so far as to say that it was just all derivative. I'm just going to say that there was enough derivative there that it was, and I feel like it was easily avoidable.
Yeah, there was a lot of recall, not just in the first act, but in the second act, or second and third act, it became more just like, okay, how many elements of the Matrix previously can we sort of work into this thing?
Right.
Again, looking at it from my lens, which we've always said is different. The two of us, we differ on how we view a movie. I think where the second and third act for me didn't quite do it was I don't think we spent enough time on the new characters.
Yeah.
There was not enough focus given to them because we were
Yeah.
so fast to want to focus back on Neo and his quest to get Trinity out. I hope. Well, before I get there, one other thing. The I think the only character disappointment I had, and it had nothing to do with who portrayed him, was the treatment of Morpheus. Um, it just it didn't. I wanted to feel good about it because I've always loved that character, probably more so than Neo and Trinity, even just because of that sort of blind hope he had and faith that he was on the right path. Um, I I was really struggling with, okay, why does this Morpheus iteration bug me? Um, and I think it's because it just didn't have it wasn't the portrayal, it was the writing. It didn't feel like a Morpheus that I'd come to know for 3 films. You know, it was too. Um, I get he was the Morpheus was trying to sort of recover what he used to be,
Mhm.
but I, yeah, and
The
here's a Nick comment I want to put up because this did throw me off. The wardrobe choices for this character actually should have never mattered to me, but it was like, okay, I don't get this, but I'm just gonna go with it because it's a Matrix movie and I'm enjoying it. So
You didn't like the wardrobe choices?
I mean, going from all black to now every color of the rainbow, great
Oh.
outfits. Don't get me wrong, but it just didn't seem right for the character. So
It
but
honestly,
that's me being picky. So
it seemed like a retrofit that worked, and if they wanted to release a digital version of the original Matrix where Morpheus is just glammed out, I am there for it and I
you
support it.
nice.
Like if they want to give George Lucas something to do on weekends, and here
Can
redo
recolor the
you
wardrobe
redid the Greedo scene, the Greedo Han Solo scene, redo this so that
with some
Morpheus looks
with some
just
color.
total awesome.
Yeah.
I I agree with you, but it's interesting. My wife, one of the comment that she made immediately at the end of the movie was, "I don't remember the name of any of the new characters, none of them." I was like, oh,
Mhm.
"Come on, you got to remember Bugs," and she's like, "Okay, I remember Bugs, but that's it." And then I sat down, I was like, "Yeah, I don't remember any of them either," and that's a problem because in the original, especially since they went through the trouble of having him come out of the unplug him, like it
Yeah.
just yeah. And
Yeah.
and I really, really wanted to understand what Smith's motivation was, but
Right.
I don't feel like I ever got there. But
No, I didn't either.
yeah,
Yeah. Interesting use of the Merovingian, whom Neo refers to as Merv. That was fantastic.
yeah.
But
But the
again,
Merovingian, I love the Merovingian from the
yeah,
sequels.
I agree.
He's probably the best thing to come out of the sequels, and I'm on the one hand, I like that they kind of made him like a crazy like hobo. On the other hand, it it just seemed like he was there because they knew people would like that he was
Right.
a
It
hobo.
was Yeah, I got more. I felt more of a reaction to his appearance in the film than I did to Spider-Man and all of its reveals. So,
Oh wow.
yeah, I mean that seriously because I loved that character so much, and I didn't have a problem with where they took the character because of the fact that we've finished the third movie, it made sense that he would have lost everything, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Yes.
when we get to the conclusion of this film, and this is a question I was alluding to earlier, Paul, it leaves it at a point where sequel or no sequel, we're going to be okay. Does this continue, or is this it for the Matrix, in your opinion?
So, as I was alluding to earlier, and Nick mentioned as well, we never find out Smith's motivation, which
Right.
sucks and makes me hope they don't make another one.
Okay.
Because I think if you have a sequel, this Smith has to be, like it's got to be the Smith again, and I just don't think that that whole aspect of the story was fleshed out at all.
Right.
And I'm not. I after the first Matrix, I was so excited for number two.
Sure.
And in spite of how much I didn't like number two, I was still super excited for number three because I
Right.
knew it was going to be a trilogy. At the end of this, I hope they don't make another. I was equally excited for number four. I really don't want a number five. I genuinely,
I agree.
genuinely, flat out. I just because Lana, if she wants to make it alone, or her sibling wants to come in and help out too again. I just don't know what more could they possibly do with these characters
Right.
that would be compelling,
I agree.
because they didn't have a full 2 hours this time. They just
Right.
didn't. And
Yeah.
so yeah.
I was feeling that 2.5 hours later. So
Yeah, they had an hour of awesomeness though, and I genuinely feel like, make it a heist movie,
yeah.
and just that's your ugh.
Yeah.
Mm.
Very, very interesting entry into the series. I agree as well. I don't want there to be another one. I think this was, I'm not going to say a fitting conclusion, but it was an
Adequate.
interesting, adequate. There you go. An adequate conclusion if
Yeah.
this is to be.
Yeah.
I'm glad we got to revisit the world of the Matrix. And I think at this point, it's a good time to share with our viewers, like we always do, that here on Real to Real Talk, we have a 5 taco rating system. A movie can get as many as 5 tacos, but if you want to give it some extra love, you can throw in some guac. So, Paul, if you don't mind, what is your taco rating for The Matrix Resurrections?
I'm going with 3+ guac. If the first hour gets 4+ guac and is borderline 5,
Mm-hmm.
the last hour and a half is definitely maxed out at 3.
Okay.
If that, and so we'll give it 3+ guac.
Doing the math.
And it sounds like a cop out rating because I've been using it a lot lately, but I think it's a fair, because it's it's definitely better than just 3, because it's
Sure.
definitely better than maybe I could probably be talked into just 3, but I'm going 3+ guac.
Yeah, and I am as well. I mean, when this movie was over, I was glad it happened, but it didn't really wow me in the overall. I had some there were some cool, nostalgic moments within it. I definitely did like the way they wove in the earlier films and plot points into the situation his character was in at the start. I loved all of that exploration of, the Matrix, him being part of the Matrix, which is supposed to be this sort of perfect thing.
Right.
And yet he's still suffering the way he is. Some great psychological stuff happening in that first act. But overall, it didn't wow me the way I might have hoped. 3 tacos, very good tacos with some delicious guac for The Matrix Resurrections from me. We encourage you to check it out. It is still on HBO Max for a bit, and you can see it at theaters as well. And let us know what you think, because hey, don't let us sway you to not go to the movies, because that would be bad. Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you, Paul, for your thoughts on Matrix Resurrections. We have a couple of other films we do want to talk about and look at while we are here.
Yep.
And I'd like to go to the Kingsman next, because of the 3 we're going to talk about tonight, as excited as I was about the Matrix Resurrections, I was almost equally excited for the Kingsman, because I've enjoyed the Kingsman series.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I came out of this film feeling like, what?
See, I was wondering how you would feel, because they went and took an action series and made it Talkie McTalkerson, and I was thinking Sergio might really like that, but
I did.
But he
But
also might dislike it because I mean, much like with the Matrix, the action is just sucked out. The marrow of the Kingsman movies is
yes.
absolutely sucked out
Well,
of this movie.
let me tell you what else is sucked out of this movie and this series as a result of this film is the campy humor. Uh, the first two Kingsman movies had a lot of sort of silliness, woven into. I mean,
Yeah.
do we even need to talk about the second one to talk about how campy that was? Um,
Yeah.
and what they did in trying to establish a prequel and an origin story, they 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 went too far to the direction of telling a story.
Interesting.
It it I loved the talkiness. I loved all the exposition. I love the interesting use of historical characters. Um, I felt like I expended more emotion than I should have for a movie in this series.
Interesting.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. And I will back up what you're saying with what they ended up doing was giving all the campiness to the villains entirely.
Yeah, but we
Uh
didn't see enough of them.
and we did not see enough of them. Like, look, I'm just gonna come out and say it. If you make Rasputin a villain in your movie, I am 100% there. I
Yeah,
am going to watch your movie as quickly as humanly possible. I saw this movie before I saw The Matrix. Why? Because I needed to see Rasputin as a villain. I just love Rasputin as a villain.
yeah.
And I was not the least bit disappointed with every second he was on screen, and I could
Right.
have used probably about 30 minutes more of him.
I felt like it was too sudden a removal of the character, and I was like, God, because I mean, he was peaking, in terms it's
Oh
just,
my god.
and I want to give credit because I never remember his name, but the gentleman who played Rasputin, we've seen him in so many roles.
Fargo.
Riz Ifans, I believe is how you pronounce it. He's one of those actors that you're like, oh, hey, it's that guy
Yeah.
because he's in so much good stuff. Um, the cast on paper is monstrous, but we see so little of so many people, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and the direction in which they took this particular story was just too much drama. Great
Yeah.
action sequences. I
Yep.
loved the action sequences. The battle on top of the mountain fortress was amazing. But
Fantastic. The Rasputin battle was
yeah, oh, it was amazing.
A
Yeah, fantastic.
plus
That whole
plus plus.
exchange between him and the Duke of Oxford, Ray Fiennes,
Yeah.
was brilliant.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
some very big high points for the Kingsman, but I was like, interesting choices made here, and
Yeah. Yeah.
obviously left for a sequel.
Its baseline was very, very bland melodrama. And it
Right?
just was like,
Yeah.
I I knew that going in that this was going to be a different kind of movie because I
Yeah.
just had read reviews on that, and I wasn't expecting it to be this different. Like the whole interplay between the Ray Fiennes and his son, it
Mm-hmm.
just it just it rang a little empty in the end. Like by the
It
end,
true, and not only that, but I don't know that we're going spoilers on this one, or if we even need to bother, but um, they there was some good stuff there between the two of them, and then there was, in my opinion, a cheap out to get some emotional pull that was,
yeah.
I don't think, necessary. I
Yeah,
just,
I agree with you 100%. I think the movie's
yeah,
far more interesting without, a twist or, like a
right,
big emotional. Like they can have that emotional, resonance
right,
without doing what they did just in the aftermath of being in World War One. Like it's
right,
just like, that's enough. Like you
yeah.
don't need just and they telegraphed it. So
Oh, I
um
mean, so clear. Yeah,
but but damn, the fun stuff is really fun.
it is. It is. There are some wicked battles
It's
in sequences in this film.
100% worth watching this movie just for Rasputin, and I will absolutely die on that hill. But yeah.
I'll tell you, getting to the theaters is becoming more and more difficult for me, just because I've lived the home life so long now for a couple of years. It's like, I gotta put pants on. But getting to this one was fun. I was glad to make that outing because I did enjoy it. I am puzzled by some of the choices made, but not at all disappointed. I can't, the Kingsman series never going to get 5 tacos. I mean, there's just too much silliness.
Valid.
If I look at this movie the way I think that it was intended to be watched, there's a good epic story being told, but they just try too hard to pull at your heartstrings when this is a series that I didn't want that from, right?
Okay.
And I think it fell short in that regard. So, did I enjoy it? Absolutely. Will I revisit any future Kingsman film? Absolutely. But you can't put Stanley Tucci in a movie for less than 10 minutes and expect that I'm going to be okay with that. So,
yeah. And you can't have Rasputin be one of the major villains and then
be gone.
Where'd he go? He's Rasputin. You can't kill Rasputin.
Yeah. In fact, I got to the stinger scene, right? The mid-credits scene, and I was like, okay.
Yeah.
I was like, well, alrighty. Well, I guess
the stinger scene was also like telegraphed. It was just like,
yeah, of course, yeah. If you know your history, the influences, right? Yeah. And I have to comment on this. The ultimate reveal of the true villain, right? It was literally one of those moments where I was like,
well, yeah.
That? Yeah, okay.
Well,
okay.
No, I mean, I was just like, that was obvious. Like, it was just so obvious.
Absolutely. I knew where we were headed, but I was like, when it happened, I was like, that's where we were. Is
this supposed to be like an emotionally, like a big, like,
what? I'm not supposed to. Do you know who I don't know why this thought entered my head as a complete, like, mental earworm throughout every time that character, didn't appear, right? Because we all saw him from behind. I don't know why. But I was like, that better be Orlando Bloom. I don't know why that was.
That's interesting that you say that, because I was like, that better be Ewan McGregor.
I love it.
I was like, I knew it wasn't going to be, but I was like,
that better be Legolas.
Let it be Ewan McGregor.
That better be Legolas.
you were
like, that better be Obi-Wan.
I wanted to be Ewan McGregor doing just over the top campy villain, and that's what I want.
That's why, knowing where we were headed and who it was going to be, I was like, I'm going to be so disappointed when this is not Orlando Bloom. Yeah. And I don't even know why Orlando Bloom, because he hasn't been in any of these films. So I love it that you were thinking Ewan McGregor. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So all right. Well, that's our segue to tacos.
Yeah. This is why I gave the Matrix movie a little more, because this is like a classic 3 taco, because I really did have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Rasputin was awesome, but it's,
Yeah. I'm going to give it guac. The action sequences for me were so much fun. I love anything that involves a high mountaintop, and especially where at the end of it all, they literally will do it and say, how are we going to get down? So, I mean, there was just those little details that really made it fun for me. And so, 3 tacos plus guac. It's worth a return visit at some point for me, as I do really enjoy this whole series. But yeah. All right. Well, that leaves us with the movie Don't Look Up, as the third movie we're going to look at today. And boy, can you say satire, because obviously we know that's what it's intended to be. Yeah. And I've been watching how people are reacting to this film. And when I say that, I mean like people I know, like people in my circle. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting. It's very interesting to see people's views and such. And I'm just going to say, I really enjoyed this film. I enjoyed this film tremendously.
This was my wheelhouse.
Probably the best out of the 3.
Yeah. So this was in my wheelhouse to such a large extent that I'm almost afraid to talk about it, because humor is such a personal thing. Like,
Sure.
it is so difficult to be like, oh, I saw a funny movie. Here, you go see it. You're gonna enjoy it. You
Mm,
really have to know somebody, and particularly you have to know what they find funny to be
right.
able to say to somebody, go see this comedy
Exactly.
movie. And like, this is definitely one where I would be very surprised if anybody said, oh my god, did you say Don't Look Up? Because this is such a where this falls on the comedy spectrum is so limited in
Oh yeah.
its appeal.
It's one of those things where there's a point early on where, and I'll use this sort of as a way to describe my measure of it. There was a point about 30 minutes in where I sent Jen a note, my wife, and I said, check it out. It's funny. But then about another half hour passed and I was like, oh, is this her kind of humor ultimately?
Right.
Uh, because this movie, no, it challenges you to face it and go, you can't say this is not, this is in all of our relatability as a people, you know, if you watch this movie, you can't deny what it's saying,
Right.
right?
Right.
That this is who and what we've become.
Right.
You you can, however you feel about how we got here, because that's the piece of the conversation that for me is frustrating, because
Right.
so many people are like, well, that's because I don't care about the what that's because. I care about the fact that this movie does a great job of establishing how we think as a people now,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it isn't just trying to be funny, which is what I love about this movie.
Right.
But it's not everybody's cup of tea in terms of humor.
Right.
You have to be able to not only laugh at what's on screen, you have to be able to laugh at yourself.
Absolutely.
Because at some point, and this is where I think the movie is very effective, you have got to say to yourself, I've thought like that. I've been in that headspace, right?
Mm-hmm.
The difference is I handled it, insert your whatever your path has been, right?
Yep.
It challenges you, and but damn, it's funny.
Yeah.
And in a way that satire hasn't been captured in quite a long time.
Right. And it's it's interesting because some of the critique I've seen on this movie is that, well, satire is dead because of where we are,
Mm,
in the political discourse and everything. But I beg to differ. I
yeah,
say, oh no.
it's healthy.
This is, if anything, this was absolutely needed.
Yeah,
This is like, Doctor Strangelove,
exactly. Thank you.
with where instead of taking the gun and just blamming you in the face with it, they
Hmm.
put the pillow over your head and then blam you, like just as a silencer, because
What a
that's
horrifying visual, but yes, you're right.
that's what this movie does. I mean, it absolutely silences you
Yeah.
and says, "Hup, up, 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 up.
No.
This is where we are.
Yeah.
Fucking deal with it."
You need to
And
listen versus try to make your point. Yeah.
yeah, and if you are not capable of laughing at this, then I get it, and it's
Yeah.
okay, but you're in for, 20, 30, 40, 50 years of just miserable heartache, because it's not getting better. Like,
Exactly.
there is absolutely nothing on the horizon that implies things will
We're moving
improve.
away from
Like,
it. Yeah. Yeah.
so
It when I think about a film like this,
yeah.
um, and I think about award season that we're obviously in, as people are putting their entries in. I want to see a writing credit for this. A writing nomination for
For
this.
sure.
Um, the acting was great. There was
Sure.
nothing spectacular about it, but at least a writing award or of some sort for this film.
Yeah.
Paul, I mean, it's
I hope it
gotta.
wins. Like, honestly, like, this movie is the writing. It's really
Yeah,
not much anything else other than the writing, uh and it's just so, and obviously you need the actors to do
sure,
their part
sure.
and be spot on, and they got all of the right actors to do their part
Oh,
and be spot on,
yeah.
and it's fantastic. And
I couldn't help but think Meryl Streep has done it yet again, because we had a conversation about her a while back,
God,
and
yeah,
she's one of the in a cast of thousands, right?
yeah,
For her to stand out makes total sense,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Because of the icon we know she is. But
I could see her
yeah,
getting a supporting
I
on
think so.
this. You know, like
I
that.
could, at least a Golden Globe.
If you go anywhere for acting, it's got to be Meryl Streep. Like it's
Yeah,
just like she won't win. You
right.
know,
At least a
she's
nomination for a Golden Globe.
right. Yeah.
So, but yeah, this movie was equal parts funny and equal parts challenging, because again, you can't look away
Yeah.
and pretend that this didn't come from a real place, you
Yeah.
know.
And the most
So
amazing part about the whole thing is it was written pre-COVID. Like it was written before COVID even started. Now,
that's
obviously, once they started filming and stuff, there were a lot of things that they could probably do adjustments on and
sure.
stuff, but everything,
Yeah, yeah, it's a masterful piece of work. I just
just, yeah, I do. I have to say it was written as an allegory for our for climate,
climate change. Yeah,
for where our climate's going.
right, right.
And if you have a problem with the idea that our climate isn't going to kill us, do not watch this movie. This is not the
It's
movie
not
for
for you.
you.
Yeah,
Because it's not going to be nice to
it,
you at all.
it's going to infuriate you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
going to be really mad.
And that's the thing. I think it has a right to infuriate in some degree everybody that watches it. And if it doesn't, then it isn't working,
Yes.
because I found myself again just wanting to bang my head against the wall, because I'm like, they're so right,
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what I think, and this is why I said earlier this was my favorite of the three, was because it did force me to think.
Yeah.
It did make me laugh.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it made me go, this is where we are.
And let's be 100% honest. For what it was trying to be, it was by far the most effective. I mean,
Sure.
it's not even like an argument of what,
No.
it's so effective in everything it's trying to do. So
yeah, this goes right in there, and I'm not saying it's the same quality or I think this is better than The Big Short, but I love these types of films. The Big Short, there's I can't think of the third film I was going to mention, but these are the kind of movies I like, for the reasons of when you can do exposition and dialogue,
right,
but also turn in some humor. I'm all
maybe
in.
Wolf of Wall Street.
Yes, that was the third actually. Leo. Very, very subdued performance, but like really, really good as always. So, but yeah, Wolf of Wall Street is another one that I think is right in there. But I don't know. I enjoyed this one even more so than Wolf, and I love Wolf big time.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right. Well, Netflix weighs in with Don't Look Up, a very provocative film in terms of making you think. What do you think, Paul? What is your taco rating for Don't Look Up?
Oh, this is a tough one. This is a really tough one.
Okay.
Because I want to give it 5. I'm gonna give it 4.5. And here's, or not 4.5, but I'm gonna give it 4 plus guac. And
Sure.
Here's why it doesn't quite get 5. I think you can make this in 90 minutes. Honestly, like I just think that like there are some things that are just it's just like, okay, we get it. Like, we can definitely get to the ending now. Like,
Sure.
and I understand why they included some things. Basically, a lot of the kind of the superfluous stuff that goes on with Leo's character.
Yeah.
And they take him on a journey that I get, and it humanizes him to a certain extent, and it indicates that it rightfully so, absolutely rightfully so. None of us are immune to this. Okay,
Right.
You and I, or nobody on either end of anywhere on the political spectrum is holier than anybody else in being distracted and losing course, and they did that for that reason, and great, but when you're talking about a movie, it's just like, oh, it just takes away a little bit. But so
yeah,
that's
I agree. Well, keep that 4 plus guac up on the screen, because that's where I'm going to land. And the reason mine didn't get to 5, because I really wanted to give this movie 5 tacos.
Me too.
It lands at 4 plus guac because the last 15-20 minutes And I think this is part to what you're saying. It was just too much melodrama with
Okay.
the family. And I also am going to fault this film because you had Jennifer Lawrence at this level, and then you didn't do anything with her,
What do you
you
mean?
know,
You got to
because
listen to her complain about the general charging her $10 for snacks.
yes, that was fun. Okay. And I loved the late callback on that joke in the very almost middle of the third act. Um, but I think this character could have been more.
Yeah.
And then I felt like she just sort of slowly faded into the back when
Mhm.
she was such an important character early on.
And I think
And
part of that
so,
plays into what I was saying, where they took Leo's character on a
right,
journey,
yeah,
and she just was left behind. Like
left her
she
behind.
literally,
Yeah,
not even figuratively, literally, she was left
yeah,
behind on that
yeah.
journey. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
So and again, that's a very small knock on the film. It the guac is awesome. It just didn't get me to 5 tacos, but
such good guac.
I was full. So so yeah, so you can find Don't Look Up on Netflix. I highly recommend, and I think you do too, Paul, that people watch this film. And yeah, don't be afraid to challenge yourself. Check it out
Yeah.
and keep your thoughts to yourself. No, I'm kidding. Uh, all right. So that takes care of our main topics of conversation this week, which allows us to remind you that you can check us out on social media. And we thank you for doing so. First and foremost, those watching on YouTube, we thank you for joining us. Don't forget, click that notification bell as well as the subscribe button so that you can know when our episodes post. We do obviously do the show live week to week. And it's a good time for me to announce that beginning next week, we will broadcast on Thursday evenings at 8 Eastern, 7 Central. We will be moving the show to Thursday. So get excited about Tuesday and then we'll go, oh, shoot, that's right, Thursday. I got more time to watch movies they're going to talk about. So, because we're going to go a little more spoilery, Paul, as we
Yeah.
move forward. I think it's time to challenge folks to go get those movies in sooner.
Yeah. Yeah.
So beginning next week, we will broadcast 8 Eastern, 7 Central on Thursdays on YouTube and on Facebook Live. Make sure you stop by our social media. Facebook page is Real to Real Talk, as you see on the screen. Just look up the title of the show, and you will see us there. On Instagram, we are at Real to Real Talk, and you can see show posters from past episodes and find out what we've been talking about in the past. So thank you so much for joining our social media and following us there. It is time now for a little segment we like to call What the Hell Did I Just Watch? Paul, take it away.
All right. So, the last one I did was a subdued from the standpoint of its utter weirdness. We're doing that's going to be a common thing. It's
Okay.
happening again. I have a movie that I saw over the weekend. It was released on Christmas, and it was a little film called Licorice Pizza. Paul Thomas Anderson, PTA's new film. PTA is basically very arguably the best living active director alive. And this is his new installment. And look, I'm just going to come out and say it. I love Paul Thomas Anderson, and this movie does absolutely nothing to make me think that he is not, number 2 on my list after Wes Anderson. Wes Anderson's
Okay.
number 1, PTA is number 2. And, a whole show on why. But Licorice Pizza is a movie that all throughout, and I hope it was intentional. All throughout, you are just totally uncomfortable about what's going on. Like there is an elephant in this room that is acknowledged and hit upon and touched upon throughout, which is that the two characters are 15 years apart, and one's 25 and one's 15, and the 15-year-old doesn't look like he's 15. And it's that second part that is the what the hell did I just watch part, because I just so he brought in Philip Seymour Hoffman's son Cooper to play the role of Gary Valentine in this movie. And I'm looking for how old he is, because he's not 15. Where is my IMDb? Isn't telling me how old he is. He he's 19.
Okay.
Or 18, 19. I'm sorry. If you have a 15-year-old in your life, and you have known an 18-year-old, the difference between 15 and 18 is just huge, and I can't buy an 18-year-old as a 15-year-old. I just can't.
Okay.
I have a really hard time with it. And given the fact that not only do I not buy that he's 15, he's supposed to be 15, and there are emotional, romantic ties with a 25-year-old. Is just make the damn kid 18 and
Sure.
we're good. Like, we are solid. And what the hell am I watching with a 25-year-old and a 15-year-old running around together? Like, what's going on? Now, that being said, this movie is an amazing, amazing love story, from PTA to young adults running around in 1970s San Fernando Valley.
Okay.
It's just it is such a touching movie. It is such a, I mean, God, the thing that I love about PTA is that he gets, when he loves a subject, like, and so There Will Be Blood is an obvious example of, he doesn't, he doesn't like anybody he's putting on film in There Will Be Blood.
Right.
But with Punch Drunk Love and with Magnolia, he has some really genuine feelings for the people that he's putting up on those, for some of, not all, but some of the
Sure.
people he's putting up on the screen, and it comes across. I mean, he loves his characters, and you can love his characters too. And these two characters, Alana and Gary, are just the most endearing wackos that have been on a film in a really, really long time. Gary gives off, I mentioned Wes Anderson earlier on purpose, because if you've seen Rushmore, which is Wes Anderson's first big movie, his second feature, but his first like big one, he gives off such Max Fisher vibes. But here's the thing: is Max Fisher is the exact same age that Gary's supposed to be, but the guy that's playing Max Fisher actually is just about 15, versus the guy who's playing Gary, who is 18 and he's supposed to be 15. He just doesn't look 15 at all, and he doesn't act fit. It's just what the hell? Why is he 15? Just make him 18.
Yeah.
And the things that Gary does are completely insane, and his motivation and like his life motivation, not like as a character, but like his motivations as a human being, are just like such 18-year-old vibes and such not 15-year-old vibes. And like Max Fisher is trying to put on plays, and Max Fisher just wants to stay in his high school, and that's a 15-year-old.
Yeah.
Gary Valentine is selling waterbeds, and Gary Valentine is opening a pinball hall, and that's what 18-year-olds do. That's not what 15-year-olds do. And so there we are. I frigging loved Licorice Pizza. It was, if you like Punch Drunk Love, and that's one of PTA's weirdest movies, you will absolutely love Licorice Pizza.
Gotcha.
If you like Paul Thomas Anderson, you are going to like Licorice Pizza. It might fall down a little lower on your PTA chart, but for me, it's very high up there.
Cool.
I loved it. I hope people go see this movie. I want it to do well. We need to support PTA. And there ends the lesson on what the hell did I just watch? Why is he 15?
Excellent. Why is he 15? Yeah. Speaking of, you mentioned earlier that some of these films we talked about this week aren't doing too well in the box office, but So, anywho, well, thank you, Paul, so much for sharing about Licorice Pizza. I need to make time to see it. I didn't do my marathon this year because it's
Sergio. Honestly, it's fantastic. It's such a fun experience, but you will be like, it's a little cringy too. Sean Penn pops up. It's so funny. Oh my god, there's so much to love in this movie.
Yeah, I will definitely make time to check it out. So thank you, Paul, for bringing that to us.
The best portrayal of Lucille Ball in a movie this year, even better than Being the Ricardos. Like, so it's crazy. It's wacky.
Awesome. All right. Well, you can always find out what Paul's watching week to week as we do What the Hell Did I Just Watch every single week. And yeah, we look forward to the next time, Paul. So thanks so much.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, before we wrap it up tonight, we want to remind you once again, next week, we will start broadcasting on Thursday nights, 8 Eastern, 7 Central on Facebook Live, and of course on our YouTube channel. So make sure you stick around and hang out with us, watch the movies we're going to be talking about. Although next week, Paul, we're going to do our sort of look ahead as we discuss movies that we're looking forward to in 2022.
Right.
And gosh darn it, the new Batman trailer came out, and I'm like, fine. Looking forward to it. So,
All right.
So we'll talk about that and much more as we look ahead to 2022 and the films that are supposed to release, and we shall see what happens. So I'm looking forward to it, Paul.
Yeah, me too.
Absolutely. All right. Well, as always, Paul, it is fun talking movies with you. I know that in the next few weeks and months and such, we will have the occasional guest joining us to talk about certain films. And as we get further and deeper into the awards season, it looks like we're going to have to be looking around and see where we can find all these films to watch, because there's a lot of interesting stuff out there. So I wish you continued awesome movie watching week to week, my friend.
Absolutely, you as well, sir. I've already got one. It's not an Oscar contender, but certainly awards contender ready to go for What the Hell Did I Just Watch? But I'm holding on to it.
Awesome. All right, we'll look forward to that. Okay, so in the meantime, make sure you're out there watching movies, supporting the movie business, and letting us know what you think on our social media and all that fun stuff. But more importantly than that, remember, you are awesome, you're amazing, and the world's a better place because you are in it. We'll see you next time.